Hello everybody. We're going to go ahead and start going over some of the lab values that you're going to encounter. I'm going to start off setting up fish bones here. And we're going to start going over a Chem 7 and a Chem 9 layout. So in a Chem 7 or a Chem 9, we always start out over here. Sorry. With our sodium. Then we go to our potassium, then our chloride, then we go into our bicarbonate, which is labeled CO2, I know. Then we go into our BUN, which is blood urea nitrogen, and then we go into our creatinine. Then we go over here, you'll see your calcium, your glucose, and your magnesium. Now, this is the setup of a Chem 7. You might just see a Chem 9, which would be just like that. So, sorry guys. Having some view issues here. So that's the layout of these values. And I'm going to go ahead and go over some of these values for you. So, let's see. Sorry. Trying to adjust this right. I'm going to go ahead and start a new set of fish bones here. And what we'll do is we'll go over some normal ranges. So, let's see. I'm just pulling out some lab results here. There we go. And the important thing, you won't see it on a lab format like this. I'll go over why it's labeled like this in a moment, or why we record it like this. But this is often how you'll chart it in your EPCRs, and then this is often how you'll freehand take notes to kind of save a little bit of time. So our normal sodium levels, you'll see like 135 to 145. So we'll say we've got a sodium of 140. Our normal potassium, it's usually 3.5 to 4.5. And these ranges will vary within 1 or 2, depending on the lab. You'll see normal ranges for the lab. So we'll say 4.1, so that's a normal range. Our chloride levels, and for the chloride, you'll see like anywhere between 95 to 110, somewhere in that range. So we'll go ahead and say 100. And then our bicarbonate levels, the excuse me, bicarbonate levels, you'll see anywhere between like 20 and 30, anything along those lines. They might vary. So we'll say 25. And I know that that varies from what I talked about during the ABGs and the 21 to 26. This is from venous blood. Excuse me. So then we have our BUN, which is up here, and our normal values for BUN would be 5 to 20-ish, somewhere right there in that realm. So we'll have a BUN of 10. And then our creatinine is usually like 0.7 to 1.3, somewhere in that realm. So we'll say it is 1.01. How's that? So we'll say that we're doing a Chem 9 here. If you remember, that means that we're going to have calcium, glucose, and magnesium on it. So for our calcium levels, you will see anywhere between like an 8.6 and a 10.3. The reference, for example, the labs that I'm looking at, the reference for them is 8.7, 10.2. And as I said, that can vary a little bit. And we'll say that this is a 9.7. Sorry, let me get that in focus a little better. And then our glucose, your venous glucose is just like what you would normally expect. So depending on the range, or depending on the lab, you might see 60 to 100. You might see it vary a little bit, but it's just like if you were doing a finger stick blood glucose. So 60 to 100 is perfectly reasonable. And for this patient, the serum blood glucose was 89. And then let's go through magnesium. You know what? They might not have drawn magnesium on this patient. Let me see. I thought I saw magnesium, but there is a chance that there is not. Let's see. I'm looking for magnesium on this sheet, but I'm not seeing one, unfortunately. Nope. No, mag. Okay. Well, the normal ranges for mag is usually going to be like 1.2 to 2.3, somewhere in that. And when you're looking at these, let's see. I'm going to go ahead. Sorry, guys. I've got permission to use these, but I'm still wanting to make sure I had everything covered. So when you're looking at your labs, that's what you're going to get presented with. Let me go ahead and just pan out a little bit. So you can see that you don't get it in any format along those lines. You get kind of your lab values, what they are, and then you get what the ranges are. And the reason we do it like this is because of the relationships. So if you remember, this, our sodium, this is potassium. So sodium and potassium play a very integral role with each other, right? When we're thinking about our sodium and our potassium, it's often that we're thinking about them together. And let me go ahead. So when you're thinking about your sodium and your potassium, not only are we thinking about them together, but we're also thinking about the effects. So hyponatremia and hypernatremia can be extremely detrimental to a patient. And hypokalemia and hyperkalemia can be extremely detrimental to a patient, which is why, it's why they're why you see these as the very first ones. If you have a patient who is hyponatremic, meaning their sodium is too low, then they're at high risk for seizures. So we have to be cautious because we don't want to bring the sodium up too high. If we have a patient whose sodium is too high, then you'll notice that they are very lethargic. It's interesting, with hyponatremic seizures, you actually won't get, their seizures will continue refractory to benzodiazepine overdoses, or benzodiazepine administration. As far as potassium goes, we know what's going on with potassium, right? This is something you guys probably went over a lot in cardiology. When your patient potassium gets too high, they can inevitably go into VTAC, which is why it's so important to keep a close eye on that. So, we're looking at this as well. Sodium and chloride are right next to each other. Why? Because what follows sodium? Fluid, or chloride, right? When we're talking about chloride, it's really important to keep that in perspective. Your patients might have a very low chloride if they've just had some nasogastric suctioning through like an NG tube, or if they've been vomiting. You're going to have a short bump in chloride if they are having, if you just did fluid resuscitation. So bicarbonate levels over here. Excuse me. When we're talking about bicarbonate, that's the metabolic byproduct of that we have in the bloodstream. It's what controls your acid-base balance from the metabolic aspect. With that, these patients who end up building up lactic acid, or if they, if they're in DKA or something along those lines, that's going to go down. That's where we're going to see that in our venous blood work. So our BUN and creatinine, with BUN and creatinine, we're actually taking a look at the patient's, we're taking a look at their renal clearance. With renal clearance, we're looking at, remember, BUN is the blood urea nitrogen, and we're looking at the ability for a patient to adequately process waste in their body. With BUN, it's a byproduct from breakdown of blood, muscle, protein, anything along those lines. And if it's elevated, we are having some problem with the ability of the kidneys to excrete that waste. So remember, we have patients that might have one good kidney, or they might even have they might have both kidneys are only functioning at 50%. So it's important for us to keep in mind the perspective, what's going on with these patients as we're interpreting these values. With creatinine, it's the waste product of metabolism that's in the urine. And again, this goes into the diagnosis of renal dysfunction. Increased creatinine implies that we're having some sort of issue with filtration, with getting out our the waste product, with the kidneys functioning appropriately. Then we go over to calcium, talking about calcium levels, and that's pretty straightforward. It's the calcium is an electrolyte in the bloodstream. It can have effects with cardiac issues, but we can also, decreases in calcium can come from, various or bone issues. If you have what is it with thinning bones, not osteoporosis, but like osteomalacia, then you can run into decreased calcium. You can also have it with hypoparathyroidism. You can also have it if your patient's got diarrhea. They're just excreting out calcium. Increases in calcium can come from hyperthyroidism or Addison's. It can come from excessive vitamin D. It can come from bone fractures in the bones trying to increase the amount. So there's a variety of things that can come from. And then glucose, just as if we were looking at a finger stick glucose, this is a venous sample of our glucose levels. And then magnesium is just, again, another electrolyte in the bloodstream. When we're talking about magnesium, again, normal values. So I think we said, I can't remember if we said what this one will be. I think we'll go with 1.7. Normal can be like 1.2 to 2.3, somewhere in that range. And when we're talking about magnesium, decreased magnesium can be from just an inability to excrete it. It could also be from pancreatitis. It could be from colitis issues. Increase could be from you can actually see it with diabetic acidosis, but you can also see it with Addison's and those kinds of hyperthyroid issues, and various vitamin uses. If they're taking a significant amount of magnesium or anything along those lines. So I hope this was beneficial. Thanks.